Welcome to my little corner of the internet where I teach guitar from a conceptual perspective. Today, I wanted to talk about something very simple, but it's a starting point for any budding guitar student. And the question is, if I'm wanting to learn lead guitar, what do I start with? There are three elements to lead guitar, at least with the fretboard. And those elements are scales, intervals, and arpeggios. If you add chords to that, that's the entire guitar fretboard. The rest of it is technique, music theory, and having a good ear. Technique is how you would play those things. Music theory plus a good ear, ideally both in equal proportion at least, helps you put it together. But what do you start out with? With lead guitar, as I said, it's scales, intervals, and arpeggios. If you ask a lot of music theory teachers, they'll suggest start with intervals. Most of those theory teachers I don't think are guitarists, or if they are, I don't think they understand the idea that the guitar is a shape instrument. If I was learning scales or chords, on a piano, I would start with intervals because intervals teach you how to build those things. But on guitar, the thing I would suggest is scales. So those leads you heard me play in the beginning, most of that was scales. Intervals are in every pair of notes, or anything with two or more notes has intervals, okay? I don't know if I played any arpeggios on that, but let me demonstrate real quick. So an arpeggio would be like, let's see, very famous melody, right? So that's an arpeggio. Intervals would be like, in lead guitar context, that a lot of times that might be like, you might play those notes separate, like, or, so that's the idea, but my suggestion is scales. So that leads to the question of what scale? One element of being a good guitar player is being a good guitar student, and being a good guitar student means knowing who you are, because a lot of times it's not a matter of what's the best, it's a matter of what's the best for you. I'd say that's true when it comes to gear. People say, what's the best guitar? No, what's the best guitar for you? Well, when it comes to learning, you're going to have to understand what's the best for you. And this is one of those central questions, in my opinion. So really, if you're going to learn guitar from starting with scales, you have two main types of scales: diatonic scales and pentatonic scales. Diatonic scales are 7-note scales. That's the do, re, mi scales. An example in one octave would be starting with key of C. If I do the second octave, it's the C major pentatonic scale over one octave would be, if I play the second octave. So which I would choose to start with, I want to give you some questions to ask for you to consider. Eventually you want to learn both. And having both really lets you play 95% of Western music. Scales are ultimately, scale types are ultimately, they drive style. So different scales give you some different styles. But those two, they cover most of pop, like almost all pop music and rock music, but and classical and a lot of jazz. The scale types you choose help you determine, and that you focus on, help you determine your style. But Those two make up 95% of most music, really. So if you're the type of student, if you're the type of player that is very analytical, you like to reverse engineer things, you need to know why. Why does this work? You want to know all the nuts and bolts under the hood of music. I would start with that diatonic scale because all of music is from those 7 notes, or at least derived from them. In music theory, even if we're dealing with other scales, even if we're thinking of modes and some more exotic scales, we usually relate them back to the diatonic scale. Okay, so that's what I would start with. Certainly all your basic chords are harmonized from that scale. If you're the type of player who is not as analytical, maybe you have a shorter attention span. Maybe you just want to get the most bang for your buck as fast as possible. There's a risk of losing your attention. I would start with the pentatonic scales. Also, if you're really into blues or classic rock, pentatonic scale. Blues players can play only the pentatonic scale and maybe never touch the diatonic and be fine players. So you decide what's best for you. I'm going to show you both and give you a roadmap to taking these paths. And no matter which you start with, later you want to learn the other type. I'm going to show you how you would develop as a player by learning these scales. So let's say we were going to start with pentatonic scales first. I'll do that because they're a little easier. All right. So pentatonic scales are 5-note scales. And because there's 5 notes, there's 5 positions on the fretboard. So I started it earlier on the 3rd position. Usually the first one we learn, though, is the 5th position. Now, when I talk about positions, I'm talking about how high your hand is on the fretboard. Okay, so there's the 5th fret. And there's like an imaginary line for this shape where your hand doesn't really go beyond the 5th fret. Earlier, I played it down here, and I started on the 2nd finger, 3rd fret. Technically at the 2nd position because there were some couple strings where the 2nd fret came into play. But we're going to start off with the 5th position because it's just the easiest one and it's probably the best one for beginners. So if you play the 5th position and you start from the C on the 8th fret right here on the 6th string, now you'd want to play it with your pinky, and the pinky is going to be a weak finger for you if you're a beginner. But you could get away with starting it with your ring finger, but don't neglect your pinky because it's weak. If you're a beginner, you want it to get it stronger, you need to use it. So it's like any muscle. So you'd finger it. These are all going to be 2 notes a string. So add this A. I went back to the C because I'm training my ear, okay? And you can play a C chord with, before and after that scale if it's very brand new and you're at a beginner level. It's trains your ear as well as, helping you to visualize chords with scales, okay? The scale shape we just played, if I would have started it on that lowest note, which is the A, that's A minor pentatonic. And I haven't covered this yet, but there's a music theory concept called the relative minor that says that C major has a relative minor and it's A minor. Okay, I'll cover that later, or you can Google it. But just for now, I'll just say it, and hopefully you either know what it is or you can look it up. But they're the same scale. So if I started it on the 5th fret, lowest note, there's A minor, really. And it's the same scale as C. It just started C on the C instead, okay? Same group of notes. I'm going, up and down. Everything you do forward, you do backwards. You cover all 6 strings, no matter what note you start on. You want to learn that scale intimately, and it's in a box, okay? And you want to be creative with this. I did a video, my first video on my channel is on how to practice and how to make practice fun. And I talk about how to be creative with learning this stuff, because that's how you can get over the humps of, you don't have to have self-discipline if you're creative, because creativity yields fun and passion, and then it's no longer like an exercise. And I taught you how to breathe life into this stuff, and then make something like a scale that's really an exercise, and then make it like it's or to breathe life into it so it's musical instead of just like an exercise. But anyhow, I'm gonna go a little fast now, but that was the first position, or the first shape, 5th position, and we're going to learn 5 shapes. So if we just think of the lowest note now, we started it with the A, and we learn that box, and we learn it really well, and then we go up to the next box, and we learn that one like the back of our hand, and then we go to the next one, and the next one, and then you're done. Well, no, then you got, I forgot. I did this one at the beginning, but we got to do this one just so you can see them all in one area. Or I could have done an octave lower. I think earlier I played it starting on the 2nd finger, but that time I started on the 1st, but I started on the 6th string. I don't care what note you start on exactly, except if you start on the C, you're going to hear C major. And if you start on the A, you're going to hear A minor. It's helpful to be cognizant of those notes, and maybe intentionally start on one of those and hit that chord, and it helps you hear it. But ultimately, when you're practicing them, you're going to just find that lowest note, make sure you're including that in the shape. But I just took you through 5 pentatonic scale shapes. I did it really quick. And, you might take maybe 1 month for each scale shape. And again, if you're being creative, like in my how to practice video, you can do that and it can be fun. But it might take you a month. It might take you a couple weeks. It might take you a week of scale shape, okay? Everybody's got a different learning pace. I really don't remember how long it took me when I was starting out, because it's been so long ago. But these days when I'm learning a new scale, it's usually about, I don't know, maybe a week at most per shape. Sometimes it's just a few hours at one shape now, because I'm more advanced. But you're going to do that with the pentatonic, which is a 5-note. If you decided instead you wanted to start with the diatonic, it's a 7-note scale. So there's 7 shapes on that fretboard. I'm not going to take you through them all, but I'll show you a few. I'm going to do it in the key of G, even though I know it was in the key of C earlier. But because the key of G has that, the lowest note is the 3rd fret, 6th string. That's why I'm going to do G. And you'll see that I'm doing 3 notes per string. Don't practice them as fast as I'm doing if you're a beginner. In fact, take the speed that you can play it perfectly. And if that's slow, it's okay. Practice to a metronome, or better yet, a drum machine, because it makes it musical, but it also helps synchronize your right and left hand. It's like, which hand, does my left hand follow my right hand, or does my right hand follow my left hand? The answer is neither. Both hands follow the beat. So that's how you get them in sync. So practicing to a drum machine or metronome, and you can get a drum app on the phone. You don't have to pay any money. But I just did that G major at the 3rd position, and 3 notes a string is the Berkeley method. If you look at the tabs up on, with the Google Berkeley method, 3 notes a string, you'll see the tabs of this. But I got them on the screen as well. And you'll learn that one at the 3rd position, then you go to the 5th position when I play it. And you really learn that one as well. And you could resolve it to the G, just so you hear G G major. You could do that if you want. Because again, some of this is ear training as well, but you're also trying to get your fingers, your muscle memory, and you want to learn to visualize those scale shapes on the fretboard. So you can your mind should be able to visualize them like we see on the tab. So that's important as well. So there's 7 of these, and you want to go through all 7 shapes. Basically, one shape that has its lowest note for each of the scale degrees in the scale. Okay, going up, and I'm showing it to you Berkeley method, 3 notes a string. But later on, there's some places where you can deviate from that and play like 2 notes on one string. Basically, as you cross strings from the 3rd to the 2nd string because the way the guitar is tuned. And that can come later, and you'll probably see those, and you might even figure them out on your own. But this is how I would start out with lead guitar. I would start off learning the scales, make it fun by following the practice video that I made, breathe life into it. Be creative. Boredom is a failure of creativity is what we said with that video. And once you get these down, this is the heart of all lead guitar. Intervals are built from scales. Arpeggios built from scales. As I said, you can also think of all that stuff as built from intervals. So it kind of depends upon, chicken or the egg as to how you engineer things in your mind. But I'd say this is the alphabet for lead guitar and ultimately for it all. Even chords you can build from scales. So anyhow, I hope this is helpful. Keep watching my videos. Don't forget to subscribe and like to get some more content. Thank you.